The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, a spiritual self-help book that teaches readers how to live in the present moment and free themselves from the pain and suffering caused by the mind. Here is a brief summary of each chapter, based on the web search results I found. Preface. Tolle reflects on the success of his book and responds to some criticisms. He also explains the origin of his spiritual awakening and how he came to write the book. Introduction. Tolle introduces the main theme of the book, the difference between the ego and the true self, and how to access the latter by living in the now. He also defines some key terms, such as being, presence, consciousness, and awareness. Chapter 1. You Are Not Your Mind. Tolle explains how the mind is a useful tool, but also a source of suffering and illusion. He argues that most people are unaware of their true nature and identify with their thoughts and emotions, which are often negative and repetitive. He suggests some ways to break free from the mind, such as observing one's thoughts, feeling the inner body, and practicing meditation. Chapter 2. Consciousness. The Way Out of Pain. Tolle explores the relationship between pain and consciousness. He claims that pain is the result of resisting the present moment, and that it creates a negative energy field called the pain body. He advises readers to accept the present moment as it is, and to dissolve the pain body by bringing awareness to it. Chapter 3. Moving deeply into the now. Tolle discusses the importance of living in the now, which he says is the only reality and the only time that matters. He warns readers of the obstacles that prevent them from being in the now, such as the past, the future, and the psychological clock. He also offers some techniques to enter the now, such as focusing on the breath, listening to the silence, and surrendering to the flow of life. Chapter 4. Mind Strategies for Avoiding the Now. Tolle examines the various ways that the mind tries to avoid the now, such as creating problems, seeking pleasure, and seeking salvation. He explains that these strategies are based on the false assumption that happiness and fulfillment can be found outside oneself, and that they only create more suffering and dissatisfaction. He encourages readers to realize that they are already complete and whole, and that they can access the joy and peace that are inherent in their being. Chapter 5. The State of Presence. Tolle describes the state of presence as a state of consciousness that is free of thought and ego. He says that presence is the essence of who we are, and that it can be experienced in any situation, regardless of the external circumstances. He also explains how presence can transform our relationships, our work, and our world. Chapter 6. The Inner Body. Tolle introduces the concept of the inner body, which he defines as the energy field that gives life to the physical body. He says that the inner body is a gateway to the now, and that by feeling it, we can connect with our true self and the source of all creation. He also says that the inner body can heal us, protect us, and guide us. Chapter 7. Portals into the Unmanifested. Tolle explores the unmanifested, which he describes as the invisible and formless dimension of being that underlies the manifested world. He says that the unmanifested is the source of all life, and that we can access it through various portals, such as the inner body, the present moment, the space between things, and the stillness within. He also says that the unmanifested is our true home, and that we can return to it after death. Chapter 8. Enlightened Relationships. Tolle explains how to have enlightened relationships, which he defines as relationships that are based on presence, rather than on ego. He says that enlightened relationships are possible when we recognize the being in ourselves and in others, and when we transcend the roles and expectations that the mind imposes on us. He also talks about the role of love, sexuality, and surrender in enlightened relationships. Chapter 9. Beyond Happiness and Unhappiness, There is Peace. Tolle discusses the nature of happiness and unhappiness, and how they are both dependent on the conditions of the mind and the world. He says that happiness and unhappiness are not our true nature, and that they are both transient and illusory. He suggests that we can go beyond them by finding the peace that is within us, and that is independent of any situation. He also talks about the role of acceptance, enthusiasm, and creativity in finding peace. Chapter 10, The Meaning of Surrender. Tolle concludes the book by exploring the meaning of surrender, which he defines as the acceptance of the present moment as it is. He says that surrender is not a passive or weak state, but a powerful and active one. He says that surrender is the key to living in the now, and to accessing the power and intelligence of life. He also says that surrender is the way to enlightenment, which he describes as the realization of who we are. The Power of Now is a book that teaches readers how to live in the present moment and free themselves from the pain and suffering caused by the mind. The author, Eckhart Tolle, shares his personal story of spiritual awakening and guides readers on a journey toward a deeper understanding of consciousness and spirituality. He explains the difference between the self and the mind, the relationship between pain and consciousness, the importance of living in the now, the mind's strategies for avoiding the now, the state of presence, the inner body, the portals into the unmanifested, the enlightened relationships, the peace beyond happiness and unhappiness, and the meaning of surrender. He concludes by inviting readers to embark on their own path of self-discovery and spiritual awakening. He says that the power of now lies within each person, and that by tapping into the timeless wisdom of presence, individuals can free themselves from the illusions of the mind and embrace a life of true fulfillment, peace, and spiritual awakening.